Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while since I last posted, and I'm sorry for that. But like many of you, I have been doing my best to not lose my mind during this corona apocalypse. So I hope that you all is staying safe and healthy and finding creative ways to cope during this weird period. I don't even know what to really say about it. I'm sure none of us expected any of this to happen. So, um, you know, if any of you are suffering or hopefully recuperating, or if you have any family members that are suffering, my prayers and thoughts are with you. So I just wanted to say that first, and then we'll get into the video. So I am so excited to bring this video to you. Like I said, it's been a while, so today we're gonna jump right back in and pick up where we left off. Today's video is called Let's Talk Money Part 2. So if you missed Let's Talk Money Part 1, don't fret. I'll make sure that I list the link in the description box, and then also you should be able to click on it at the end of this video. It'll be in one of these little boxes, and while you're clicking things, go ahead and click that subscribe button, sis, or bro. No discrimination here. Please click, I got tongue twisted. Please click the subscribe button and tell a friend, okay? Now is the best time to kind of tap back into your creativity. So all of my musician and artist friends out there, it is my goal to make sure that you are well aware of how the music business works, the ins and outs, as best as I can. And you see this blue book right here. This blue book right here, it is a godsend, okay? If you don't have this book in your repertoire and you are a recording artist or musician or songwriter or artist manager, representative, agent, whoever you are, honey, if you work in the music industry or you aspire to work in the music industry, you need Donald Passman's book, All You Need to Know About the Music Business. I reference this book and for all of these videos. That is where my knowledge has come from, along with my degrees and then just experience of working in the industry. But that is a godsend. It'll break things down probably way better than I can, honestly. So today's video, we're going to focus on contracts. We're going to focus on budgeting, and we're also going to talk about when should you build a team as an artist. So get ready for that. Also, I do just want to mention that I am hosting a virtual webinar on May the 16th, and it's going to be hosted on Zoom. I'll drop the registration link also in the description box. It's only $10, guys, and we're going to be talking about copyright. It's a copyright crash course. So I have tons of people reach out to me and say, I don't understand this copyright business. All I want to do is make sure my music is protected, but the Library of Congress doesn't make it easy for me to understand, and that is true. And also, the Copyright Office has recently changed the way you register your works. So I'm going to be doing an in-depth crash course on how to properly register your music with the Library of Congress. I do have to give a disclaimer that this copyright crash course only pertains to copyrighting your music in the United States. I have to say that because I have a lot of international friends who are also artists and musicians who may want to tune in. And please still feel free to tune in, because we're going to talk about every type of registration, not just copyright. I want to make sure that, one, you're getting all the money that you possibly can, which we talked about in Let's Talk Money Part 1. So definitely go back and reference that video. But yeah, I just want to make sure also that you guys are aware of what you're signing and where your money is supposed to come from. So if you're not getting paid, you know who to reach out to, okay? I don't know about you, but I don't play about my money, so I'm sure that you don't play about yours, especially now. So with that being said, let's jump right into this video. Again, click the subscribe button, and we'll see you on the other side. Okay, so welcome back everyone to Let's Talk Money Part 2. We're going to go right into, as I mentioned, what our objectives are for the day. So the first thing that we're going to discuss is building a team. This is important because a lot of artists think that they need a team right away, such as a manager. I personally don't think you need a team until one, you can afford a team, and two, until you at least reach a certain pinnacle in your career. So we're definitely going to talk about that. And then after we discuss the team dynamic, we're going to jump right into contract deals. Now, this is going to be a pretty lengthy section just because there are 5 different type of contracts that I do want to go over. And this is important because, we've seen way too many artists get burned from contracts. So we're just going to talk about kind of the main contracts and what to look out for. And then lastly, budgeting. This is something that I don't think is discussed enough amongst artists, especially independent artists. But budgeting is going to be extremely important. So thanks for tuning in. And let's get started. First thing we want to do is do a quick recap. And this is for anybody who missed Let's Talk Money Part 1 video. So the basic things that we covered were performance royalties, mechanical royalties, licensing and sync royalties, and radio royalties. Pretty much how and where you get paid. So if you remember, performance royalties come from your Performing Rights Society, so your ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and that's based upon the fact that you register your songs with those agencies. Mechanical royalties are paid to the recording artist for the sound recording, which is the recorded version of the song, or what we call a master in the industry. So you'll get the mechanical royalties from typically your label if you're a signed artist. If you're not a signed artist, then you get those mechanical royalties from your digital distributors. So that's your TuneCore, CD Baby, DistroKid, etc. The money that you're receiving from those companies, those are your mechanical royalties, not to be confused with performance royalties. Performance royalties only go to songwriters. So if you're an artist who records and writes their own music, then you should be getting both. Now moving on to licensing and sync. This pertains to television, film, commercials. So pretty much getting your music pitched or synced up to a commercial, a movie, or a TV show. Also, something to remember for licensing and sync, it's best if you have a publisher for those, which we're going to discuss publishing deals in a bit. But publishers are pretty much, their role is to pitch your music. Every major publisher has a licensing and sync department. And so they're basically responsible for pitching your music to your production companies or your music supervisors, etc., etc. And then lastly, your radio royalties. So again, there is a agency called Sound Exchange. This is where you register the sound recording. So the recorded, released version of the song you would release on Sound Exchange, because recording artists don't get paid from public performance companies for their music that's played on the radio. So for example, I Will Always Love You, which was written by Dolly Parton and re-recorded and made famous by Whitney Houston. So Whitney Houston wouldn't receive any royalties from that song from whoever her Performing Rights Society was. Dolly Parton would, because she was the songwriter of that song. So that's a quick recap. Again, I will drop the link to this video in the description box just in case you're interested in going back and doing a more in-depth recap of your own. Okay, next. So food for thought. This is a quote that I found, and I really like it because I think it's extremely important for artists to be engaged in their own careers, in their own business. So this quote says, any artist manages his own business along with his manager. Every band should, just to, make sure that you are absolutely engaged in what is happening in your business, because it's your business. So, yeah, we don't want anybody getting screwed, especially you work too hard to create your music. So you got to do everything you can to protect it. With that being said, the question of the day: when do you need a team? And I love this picture of Jay and Meek Mill at Rock Nation. And you can't see because there's a big blue block hiding it, but Meek Mill is signing a contract. It definitely doesn't hurt to have Jay-Z on your team. There's a few things to consider when you're deciding if and when you need a team. The first thing that I always say should be considered is, can you afford a team? Here's the thing. Every established artist has a team of incredibly hardworking people working behind the scenes to make things flow easily, to make these artists as big as they are. I don't know any artist who is huge or, at your Beyonce levels that got there without having an extremely hardworking and knowledgeable team who's willing to do everything that they could, to make sure that their artist or their client, succeeded. So with that being said, you got to be able to pay your team and give them some type of incentive to want to work that hard on your behalf, especially when it comes to your managers. So again, I mentioned a lot of artists, especially indie artists, when they're first starting out, think that they need a manager right away. Well, I always say, no, you don't. And that comes from my experience of being an artist manager for about 5 years. I'll have artists reach out to me all the time and say, hey, I see what you're doing for such and such and such and such. I'm looking for management. Are you accepting new clients? Blah, blah, blah. And more often than not, my answer is no. And it's not because I'm a jerk or I don't think that they're talented or I don't want to work with anybody. But it's more so because being an artist manager is such a commitment. Like, I think it's more of a commitment probably than it's a marriage. I'll just put it to you like that. It's absolutely a marriage, between both parties. And more often than not, when you're working with a new act, they don't have any money, and that's okay, because the point is, if you are really down for that artist and you really believe in what they're doing, then it's not about the money anyway. But you want to have some type of good faith gesture that all of your hard work will be rewarded at some point. And on top of that, you got to have something to manage. If you're an artist that has not released any music, you don't perform anywhere, you're not active on social media, it's like artist managers are not magicians. We can't take nothing and snap our fingers and get you a deal with Atlantic. It doesn't work that way. So it just comes down to you being open and honest and truly reflective of your own career and being absolutely adamant about what your goals are and what you hope to achieve and what your realistic expectations are. One, for the person that you appoint to be your manager, make sure that it's someone you can trust. Usually for newer acts starting out, it's a family member or a close friend. That was the case for me. One of my best friends asked me to assist him with his career, and it was a no-brainer for me. So definitely choose somebody that you trust, but also make sure that you're doing your due diligence to make sure that they have something to promote, that they can do their job effectively. So artists, managers don't get paid until they have solidified a deal for you or booked a show for you. And we're going to talk about what everybody's commission is. Looking at this slide, building a team is like the draft, and that's absolutely true. I know I spend a lot of time on artist managers because that's typically, the first people that artists kind of gravitate towards. But I do want to point out that there are more important team players that should definitely be considered. The first person that you need on your team before a manager, in my personal opinion, is a lawyer. You need an entertainment lawyer, and I know that kind of sounds daunting and extremely expensive, and I'm not going to lie to you, it can be, but a lawyer is so instrumental in your career if you're taking your career seriously, because there's going to come a point in time where you're going to be faced with a contract, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a recording contract. It could be a simple contract for you to go perform at a festival, a small festival in your town. Like, maybe, I don't know, you live in Idaho or something and it's a potato festival. Normally, production companies or promotion companies do have booking contracts for artists to sign to protect them in the case of something happens and you decide not to show up. Then there can be some legal action taken against you. Depending on what the jargon is in the contract. So definitely get a lawyer on your side. And then the great thing about entertainment lawyers is that they worked in the industry for so long that honestly, they probably have more contacts than your cousin who you're asking to be a manager, who can get you in the door or at least a meeting with the right people. So I would say focus on getting a lawyer before you start looking for a manager. Now, you notice I have managers, plural. That's because there's two types of managers that you can have on your team. There's a personal manager, which is the manager that we're most familiar with, which is what I was for my artist. And then there's what's called a business manager. A business manager is just a fancy name pretty much for your accountant. That's a person who focuses primarily on your finances. They file your taxes for you. They pay your bills. Now, this is probably for a more established artist who obviously can't. I'm sure Beyonce doesn't pay her own bills. Like, hello, she's too busy ruling the world. So I'm sure she has a business manager, looking out for her investments and her money, blah, blah, blah. But that's what a business manager does. And then lastly, someone to consider putting on your team is a booking agent. So this is the person that's also probably more important than your manager because they're going to keep you booked. Now, I will say it is a little difficult depending on your genre of music to get a booking agent. They're super picky, especially like if you're an urban artist. And I know that sounds terrible, but this is just speaking from experience, especially if you're more soulful / R&B. If you're not really like what I like to call the trendy alternative R&B or trap soul artist, even with those artists, it's still kind of hard getting a booking agent. So really, those work by word of mouth and references. So if you know somebody or you have a fellow artist who's with a booking agency, then you probably have a better chance of maybe signing with that booking agency because you have a reference there. Okay, so now we're just going to talk about the functions of each role, which we already kind of did that, but I just want to take a look at the commissions. So again, an entertainment lawyer, they advise you on contract deals. They can introduce you to the right people. More importantly, ensure that you don't get screwed. Now that's kind of like a loaded statement because history tells us that some entertainment lawyers in the past have absolutely screwed over their clients, but that's because they're, and in those particular instances, there have been a conflict of interest. For example, where the entertainment lawyer represents you and the record label. That is absolutely a conflict of interest, and I would run far, far away. You need an entertainment lawyer who's only representing you. They don't need to be representing your manager. They don't need to be representing your booking agency. They don't need to be representing your label. They need to be independent of all of that. And they usually take a percentage or a retainer fee. So it just depends on the relationship you have with your entertainment lawyer, also the deal or the contract. So just keep that in mind. So next, your booking agent. So these are people who are responsible for booking you for concerts, festivals. If you sign with CAA, Creative Arts Agency, they have all type of departments that can book you for speaking engagements, get you endorsement deals, even television roles. There's several different type of agents that you can have. Typically, a booking agent just in the music world takes a 5 to 10% commission of whatever your gross deal is that they have, whatever your gross income is going to be from the deal that they presented for you. For example, let's say you're with a booking agency who books you for Coachella and they negotiate your payment for one 20-minute set on a smaller stage in Coachella is going to be $7,000. Well, just know that they're going to get 5 to 10% of that $7,000, and it's going to come out of that gross. So gross means the money that you have that has been untouched. You haven't deducted any type of fees from it. So if it's a 10% of that $7,000 fee that they've negotiated for you, then they're taking $700 off the top. Same thing with a personal manager. Your personal manager is obviously, the introduction to you. That's someone who's on the front line, pretty much selling your music, promoting you, assisting you with creative input if you let them. If you let them. I just had to mention that because some artists do not allow their managers to get creatively involved, and sometimes that's valid. But if you have a manager who's also musical or been in the music industry, or has some type of value, hopefully they do, that they can contribute, then it's worth the chance to listen to them if they have something creative that they want to share that can help you grow in your career. So just keep that in mind. Manager percentages or commissions, they can range for newer acts starting out. They're typically between 15 to 20% their commission, and that's because managers do not make money when they first start out unless it's an established act. We just don't. More often than not, we spend our money to assist the artist, and that's maybe spending it on gas, on transportation. We're driving our own cars, picking up the artists, taking them back and forth between rehearsal, studio, paying for studio time, making sure they eat. Seriously, like different things we'll spend our money on just to get the artist started until we can start booking some real gigs for the artists, and we can start kind of recouping that. So that's why that percentage is so high, if you're wondering. Now, as you get bigger as an artist, that commission can come down. So if you're someone who's at a Lady Gaga level or Ariana Grande level, then if you're their manager, probably taking home maybe anywhere between 10 to 15%. Or 10 to 12% versus 15 to 20. So just keep in mind that that commission can slide. And then lastly, a business manager, I wouldn't worry about this one too much again, if you're not on that level yet. But again, they're responsible for keeping track of your money. If you're familiar with Rihanna's song, Bitch Better Have My Money, that to my knowledge, that song was about her having a run-in with her business manager who was stealing money from her, I believe was the rumor, at least. So yeah, make sure that you are vetting these people, asking for references, because this is your money. So you want to make sure, we talk a lot about how you make money, but I also want to tell you how you're spending your money, and this is a big part of it, if you're on a professional level. So they don't have really necessarily a commission percentage. It's more so a monthly minimum that you would pay them to maintain your finances. Okay, so y'all know I love a good math problem. So we're just going to take everything that we talked about in terms of all the percentages, and we're going to apply that to a good old word problem, just so we all understand what we're looking at here. Okay, so let's say an artist books a small sold out concert that makes them $5,000. So let's say you booked a small stage at Bonnaroo. This is your first time. You're super stoked. You have a booking agent who linked this deal for you. So based on the percentages that we have talked about from your booking agent, from your personal manager, how much realistically are you going to take home? What is going to be your net profit from your Bonnaroo performance based on what we've talked about so far? And I wanted to use the high end of the percentage commissions just because that's honestly more realistic for a newer act starting out. With that being said, your team gets the percentage based off your gross, which is the $5,000. That is your gross profit. So 20% of $5,000 is $1,000. So right off the top from this performance, your manager is taking home $1,000. Period. So I know you're like, dang, this $5,000 is moving kind of fast. Well, guess what? We haven't even gotten to your booking agent. So you don't then take 10% from 4,000. No. That 10% is based on that 5,000. So your booking agent is going to get $500. So now you're out $1,500 from that initial 5,000 that you thought you were going to pocket. Now I have 30% miscellaneous here because that's going to be more of a realistic scenario, because you're going to have to pay your band, transportation, unless that was something that was negotiated, that your booking agent negotiated. But um, for the sake of this study, we're going to say that you are responsible for taking care of your transportation and the transportation of your band. You're responsible for feeding your band. And if you have a DJ who travels with you, or a sound engineer who travels with you, if you don't want to use the sound engineers that are booked at Bonnaroo, then all of that's coming out of your pocket. So that's why I did miscellaneous at 30%. If we take that 30%, that's $1,500 from that 5,000. So let's see where we are now. You have 4,000 once you paid your manager. You were at 3,500 after you paid your booking agent. So that 30% is still based on that $5,000. So that means that's another $1,500 that you just lost trying to pay your band. So let's do a quick tally, figure out how much money you're going to be taking home after all is said and done. So your net income is going to be $2,000. That is your net income. So that means you have paid all of your expenses, or all of your commission to your team. Hopefully that makes sense. So you see down here where it says artists 40%. We really could have just done 40% of 5,000 to get to the $2,000 that you were going to take home. But again, I wanted us to be able to break it down and see who takes home what in that scenario. In summary, for this section about building your team, just some helpful tips to remember. Do your research. Again, there's nothing wrong with asking for references, for vetting people, asking around, because you don't want any busters on your team, or anyone who's there solely for financial gain, who doesn't believe in what you're doing, who doesn't even like your music. That's the thing. And I've talked to a lot of different managers who say, I don't care about the music. I'm just here to sell, 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 sell. And that may work for some artists. Maybe you don't care that they don't like your music. Maybe you just want somebody who can sell, sell, sell. But for me personally, the type of manager that I am, I have to believe in what you're doing, because I go all in. I've invested in my artists. I've spent my own money in my artists and have not asked to recoup anything back, which does not happen very often, because managers can absolutely put a contract in place where they can recoup their expenses. I don't have contracts with my artists because that's how much I believe in them. And that's the type of relationship that we have. Now, do I suggest that you don't have a contract with your manager? Absolutely not. You need a contract. But again, just plan ahead, be proactive. We're going to talk about budgeting, but absolutely budget for this, because this is a long journey. If you can't afford it, don't string a manager along if they are not there, if they're not willing to be on your team for free. And I wouldn't go into it expecting them to do it for free. That's the thing too. We're all professionals here, and there's a certain level that you want to get to. So it's a certain level you got to start at. And then lastly, question everything. If there's something you do not understand, or if you feel like you're getting a runaround, or you're getting what I like to call the army recruitment speech, where they are selling you a ton of bullshit, question it. Question it. Do not sign a contract. Do not sign a contract that you do not understand and that you don't that you have reservations about, because 9 times out of 10, if it sounds suspicious, baby, it probably is. So that is a nice, beautiful segue into our next topic of contracts. The types that we're going to focus on today are production deals, record deals, manager deals, publishing, and distribution deals. So, if it if it gets a little crazy, then feel free to pause the video, take a deep breath, and jump right back in. So we're just going to break down the difference between all of these contract types. So starting with a production deal. Production deals are often referred to as a demo deal. So essentially this means a producer has taken an interest in you, for example, and then has decided to produce and record a professional demo tape that they then plan to shop to record labels on your behalf. So, for example, let's say you run into Hit Boy, and Hit Boy is like, you know what, I love your sound. I think it's dope. I got a production company. I want to sign you to. I want to do, your demo with you, and then from there we'll see who may want to pick you up. That is very common. So these deals can be a little bit tricky because the wording in the contract is very important. It really does matter because you can either enter into an exclusive agreement or a non-exclusive agreement. And we'll talk about the difference. So an exclusive deal means you are bound to that producer. So let's say Atlantic picks you up and they say, you know what, Hit Boy, you brought Rich Homie Quan to us. Based on your deal, we're going to let you produce this album in exchange for some points on the album. So points are basically the percentage that the producer takes of the royalties every time the album is sold, purchased, or streamed. Now, the non-exclusive agreement means that you are not legally bound to work solely with the producer if you land a record deal. Now, typically in a deal like this, you can work with whoever you want to, but the producer will probably have some type of language in there that says that they want to recoup their investment in you. So that's studio time, that's mixing time, that's mastering fees, whatever they feel like they want to recoup from doing this demo with you and then landing you this deal with the record label. They can put that in the contract, but it's not an exclusive agreement, which is great, which means you can work with anybody else that you want to work with. Now going back to the exclusive agreement, again, it pretty much guarantees that producer first rights to be able to produce your record. If it's not the whole album, then maybe they negotiate that they get at least, if you're dropping a 12-song album, maybe they negotiate that they can produce 8 out of those 12 songs. And again, that's going to be in exchange for a percentage of album royalties. Some production deals are really hard to get out of, so please consult an attorney on all of these deals before signing any of them. And I'm going to give you a classic example of a production deal going wrong when we get into our case study. But for now, we're going to move on. So record deals, which is probably what we're all most familiar with. The most common type of record deal today is what's called a 360 deal. These deals are not favorable to artists in any way. Now, I know if a label is listening to this, they're probably like, why on earth, Kim, are you spilling the tea on the industry that you want to work in? Spilling the tea because I care about artists. I care about the business too. I see it from both angles. I honestly do. But I'm just telling you, as an artist, a 360 deal is the standard in today's music industry. So good luck trying to negotiate any other type of deal. Especially if you don't have leverage, and we'll talk about what kind of leverage that is in a minute. A 360 deal means that label, or now Live Nation, which is a company that puts on concerts and has venues all over the world, they now also offer 360 deals. So if you are signed to a 360 deal with any type of entity, that means that every type of income source you have is available for recoupment. Recoupment is a big fancy word for we want our money back. So imagine that you are a loan company, you're one of these financial companies, and you give a $60,000 loan, or if you're one of these jobs, like $1,000 sign-on bonus if you sign up for Lyft, something like that. Whatever is easier for you to understand. But these are loans. They're not free money that you get to keep because you're an awesome artist. You may very well be an awesome artist, but the label doesn't know that just yet. They're taking a gamble on you. They're risking it all to promote you, which is what they're in the business to do. So if you flop, then you are going to owe that label for a very long time. If you don't flop, good for you, but it's also going to be a long time before you actually start to make some real money, because if you are a touring artist, then they're recouping money from your tour. If you sell your own merchandise, the label's recouping money from your merchandise. Album sales, downloads, streams, the label is recouping money from those as well. And in some contracts, if you have any type of endorsement deal, whether you like are endorsing some type of beverage or some type of clothing brand, some depending on the language, that's even up for grabs. So if you can, it depends on what you want. If your thing is, I don't care, I want to be famous, absolutely sign a 360 deal. If your thing is, I want creative freedom and I don't necessarily want the fame, I just want to be financially stable and be able to tour, then a 360 deal is not for you, my friend. So the next thing too about record deals is what you may see some language in there called a renew option. So a renew option is pretty much another fancy term for an extension. So normally every contract has some type of clause at the end that talks about some renewal period after your initial contract period is up. So if you sign a deal with Atlantic for 7 albums over 10 years, which is a crazy contract, I would never sign a 10-year contract. But if you're a 7-album, 10-year contract, then after those 10 years are up, if you've done very well, then your label can say, you know what, we're not going to drop you. You've made us a crap ton of money. We're going to extend your contract for another 5 years for 2 more albums. That's pretty much what a renew option is. Advances are self-explanatory. They're loans or like sign-on bonuses. Labels want a return on their investment, which means they will absolutely recoup that. So it's in your best interest to make a bop that will make way more money than the advance that you were initially given. And then lastly, parent companies. Okay. So this is something that's not really talked about during when you talk about contracts. So, back in the day, there was, a ton of like mini labels or various imprints. Well, now a good portion of those labels have been absorbed into what we now know as the big three. So that's Universal, Sony, and Warner. And the thing to know is that when you're signing a deal, you have to know who you're getting in bed with or who you're getting in business with. Because you might think, oh, I'm just signing with Atlantic. Well, depending on the language, maybe Atlantic has a distribution deal with Warner. So if Atlantic has a distribution deal with Warner, that means Warner is also going to be collecting royalties from you because they're the ones who are distributing your music. So they have a hand in the pot too. And when we go over our case studies, again, we're going to talk about some real world examples where it paid to not understand the role of parent companies and, again, production deals gone wrong. So we'll skip on to manager deals. Manager deals are pretty straightforward and self-explanatory. Some managers don't believe in having contracts. I advise you to absolutely have a contract with your manager to protect you, and it protects the manager as well. So usually there's like an initial term of 2 years, and there can be an option to extend. If you are unhappy or dissatisfied with your management, then you want to make sure that you consult an attorney. I'm going to keep saying that, and put some type of language in there that allows you an opportunity to get out of your management deal at some point without it being a breach. So just think about that. The sunset clause. What a sunset clause does is it protects the manager and says that if a manager should be released from their duty, or if the contract ends before the manager is able to actually see any of that money, then the artist is responsible for paying that manager a certain percentage, and then the percentage decreases over time. So let's say You had a manager, 2 year contract is up, and you decide, I really, it was a good run, but I want somebody else. But that manager struck, some deals that don't go into effect until after the contract. Maybe he struck a movie deal for you, but it's going to take 3 years, for the movie to come out or whatever the case may be. But that was a deal that he negotiated for you. Then it's only fair that you compensate that manager, he or she compensate that manager for that deal versus giving that commission or whatever you're going to make, from that deal to a new manager that didn't have a hand in it. So the sunset clause says for the first year or so, you'll make 15% from any deal, that you had a hand in. The next year, you'll make 10%. And on the last year, you'll make 5%. So it can vary, but that's why they call it a sunset, because it's slowly descending over time. That's where that name comes from. And lastly, we talked about this. Managers can absolutely recoup, and they can put that language in their contract to recoup any money that they have initially invested in you. A lot of managers won't do that, but they have the right to. So if they're spending their money on studio time for you, finding you producers, um, you know, super professional mixing engineers, and they're footing the bill for that, then they absolutely have the right to ask to recoup that money back. Okay, so publishing deals. Publishing deals can be very fruitful depending on what you want. Now, this only pertains to songwriters, unless you're a singer songwriter or an artist who writes and records their own music. Then you can also have a publishing deal. But publishing deals, they can go both ways. The thing to know about a publishing deal is that you are absolutely signing over your rights to your music to the publishing company. Very much so. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you are if you have a catalog and you're signing with Sony BMG, um, BMG is absolutely taking your catalog. Now they're going to compensate you for it, and their goal is to exploit your music, and to get you as much money as possible. So pitching your music to different television shows, movies, etc., licensing your music for various different things. Like, that's what a publishing company does. And you will absolutely make money for that. Or pitching your songs, if you're not a recording artist but you're a songwriter, pitching your songs to recording artists. That's how you get paid. And publishing companies are very good about doing that. And also they're very good about making sure that they collect all the money that you are due. You could do it on your own, but they have existing relationships and resources with these performing rights societies, with Harry Fox, with all of these different agencies that you would then have to try to do on your own, which is very daunting. You probably wouldn't know where to start. So, I definitely see a positive in having a publishing deal, but I also see the negative. And the negative, again, is losing the rights to your music. Now, depending on the deal, depending on copyright statute, it changes all the time. There is a small window where you have an opportunity to buy your music back, possibly. And that is something called statutory terminations. That's a little more complex, so we're definitely not going to go over statutory terminations, but that's what it's called. So you see here that it has admin deal versus publishing deal. So an administration deal is basically you saying, hey, I don't want you guys to be my publisher, but I want you guys to maintain this for me. So they don't have as many rights as they would if they had a publishing deal. Pretty much they're just managing your publishing for you. So let's say you have your own publishing company. So if I had a publishing company called Kimbo Slice Publishing, and I wanted to strike an admin deal, I might go to Universal and say, hey, Universal, I'm already signed to you as an artist. Now, as a songwriter, I have my own publishing company, but I would like for you guys to be the admin. So if anybody wants to license my music, I want them to have to come through you. I want you to manage that. So that's what an admin does. They work on your behalf. Now, if I say, hey, Universal, I want you guys to be my publisher. Well, if I'm signing Universal, I probably don't have a choice. I probably have to sign with Universal Publishing as well. But if I'm an independent artist and Universal approaches me and say, hey, Kim, we've heard the songs that you've written, and we think that we have a lot of artists on our roster who we can pitch your music to. How about signing a deal with us? Then I might say, yeah, absolutely. Let's do a co-publishing deal, which means we are joint owners in my catalog. I'm not completely signing it over. So if I have Kimbo Slice Publishing, then I'll go into a joint deal with Universal Music Publishing, and anytime my song is played or whatever, when it comes time to collect royalties, then that pie is cut in half. So I'm gonna get half of those royalties administered directly to me versus it all going to my publishing company and then them paying me whatever percentage they promised me in my deal. So that's something to consider. Maybe consider doing a co-publishing deal if you don't want a full publishing deal. Lastly, distribution. So distribution deals are typically between the record label and a distribution company, but now we're in this whole wave of independent artists. So you don't really need a label. You can go directly to a distribution company. Um, or you can go strike a deal with a label as a distribution company. For example, I remember hearing interviews with Nipsey Hussle wanting to strike a distribution deal with Universal, I believe. I could be wrong, but I believe it was Universal or Rock Nation. I know that he was talking about having a deal with Rick Ross, but that fell through. But I believe it was Rock Nation. But pretty much, let's say you're an independent artist, so you choose to be an independent artist, you may then go to Rock Nation and say, hey, you guys already have resources with the distribution company in terms of like manufacturing and printing these CDs. I don't want to have to go through all of that. Let me sign a deal with you that says you will use your resources and your money to distribute my record through your channels, print off my records, put them in all of the stores that you would send, your artist to, so like Target, whatever, and then put me in all the digital stores that you have access to in exchange for a percentage of my sales. That's one type of distribution deal. Another distribution deal could be maybe you're an independent artist and you reach out to the Orchard, which is an independent distribution company who was bought out by Sony. You may say, hey, I want the Orchard to distribute my music. I don't want to go through CD Baby or TuneCore. I want to go through somebody who has the ability to get me on Spotify, playlisting, and use their resources. So maybe you reach out to the Orchard and say, hey, I'm such and such. This is what I've done. Would you guys be interested in distributing my music? That's also possible. So now I just want to, we're almost done, guys. I know this video is kind of lengthy. So definitely feel free to stop, pause, skip around. But I definitely wanted to make sure that I went into detail. I'm just like that anyway. I'm a very thorough person because this is years of me absorbing this information. Years. This is a master's degree in this later. Reading a ton of books and working in the industry. So I know this information like the back of my hand. I've absorbed it. But this is a lot of information to absorb at one time. And I realize that. So that's why, I kind of like to break it up and have case studies and, things that are more interesting to talk about. And again, you guys have the freedom to go back and reference this as much as you want to. So, the first case study that we're going to talk about is TLC, man. They were just, bless their hearts, they were just screwed completely. So these are just some headlines that I screenshot from TLC, talking about them having to file for bankruptcy several times. Even the picture itself is there's a picture of them with all of these Grammys. I don't know if you guys remember seeing this video clip But they were fed up. TLC had had enough, honey. They were like, listen, we are the number one selling female group in the 90s. We've sold 15 million copies, and we have made these people over $170 million. And all we have to show for it is a measly $50,000 and some little rinky-dink Jeep. Somebody got to show us where the money is. And I'm going to tell you how that went about. So the pictures you see up here is L.A. Reid and his former wife, Pebbles. So Pebbles was responsible for discovering TLC. Came up with the name, so she says, discovered TLC. She had a production company called Pebytone. So she signed TLC to this production deal. Okay? So she does this, creates a demo with them, shops them around. Well, she doesn't have to go too far because her husband, L.A. Reid, is now in a joint venture with Babyface, and they've created a label called LaFace Records. Well, LaFace Records was an imprint meaning like a subsidiary, if you will, or comes under Arista Records, which was Clive Davis's record label. Clive Davis is the one who discovered Whitney Houston. He founded Arista, so that was his label. So now you start to see these parent companies and these layers. So you started with Pebytone Management Company, which was pretty much a production company. She signs TLC. She then goes to her man and say, hey, babe, I don't know if this is really her, but this is how I imagine it being said. Hey, boo, can you go ahead and sign my group? L.A. Reid is like, all right, cool. So he strikes the deal to sign him to LaFace Records. LaFace Records is pretty much like they have everything in house. They're writing the songs. And again, LaFace Records was hot in Atlanta. This is the same label that had Usher on their roster, Outkast, Tony Braxton. I mean, Babyface making hits out of the 90s. Hits after hit after hit. So they had a distribution deal with Arista. But guess who was the parent company of Arista? Well, at the time, that was Sony. Well, Arista is still under Sony. It's a Bertelsmann group. But so now there are 4 layers. These are 4 layers. And so when you ask yourself, how in the world can TLC sell $170 million worth of records, 15 million copies sold, and they only have $50,000 to show for it? You got 4 different companies with their hand in a cookie jar trying to get paid. You have 3 ladies in a group who all took advances. When they're presenting you with these cars, that's coming out of your money. And we've seen it on all of these different music biopics. Labels always want to give artists a car. Always. Same thing if you just saw the Clark sisters. Tweaker comes home with a new Lincoln because she sold her publishing, her catalog. I mean, time after time after time. So I'm not going to beat this dead horse. We have a few more case studies to look at. But I'm telling you, production deals can go wrong real quick. And any deal can really go wrong really quickly. So it is in your best interest to make sure, one, if you're make sure that there are no conflicts of interest. I mean, the wife of your production company, I mean the founder of your the production company you're signed to is the wife of the record label that you're signed to. I mean, that screams conflict of interest. And they probably have the same lawyer who's also probably representing you or advising you to sign the contracts. I don't know. But read your contracts, okay? So the next, Tony Braxton. Lord have mercy. Tony Braxton has also sold over 15 million units, and she's also made them over $170 million. She's filed for bankruptcy twice. She's sued LaFace Records, which also TLC had to sue LaFace Records and Pebytone. But Tony Braxton sues LaFace Records to get out of her contract. So the crazy thing is, which I just learned, is that California has a statute on the books that says after 7 years, an employer can no longer force you to enforce labor or service. So, yeah, that's how she was able to get out of her contract. And so you can see the snapshots here from the 90s. And it tells you right here, Braxton cited the law that states employers may not enforce labor or service after 7 years. And the crazy thing is that was a statute that was rarely ever used. And labels knew about it, but, they absolutely didn't want their artists to know about it, because then any artist can say, well, after 7 years, I'm out. And if you're someone who was signed to a 10-year contract, then obviously that's not favorable for the record label. So all my point is that it is very possible to prevent these type of instances if you just simply read your contract. Now, I'm not saying reading can only go so far. I'm not saying that you'll read your contract and you can go and slap the contract down in the face of the A&R person who signed you or whoever and say, I'm not signing this, change this sucks. I mean, you can, but they might say, okay, there's another one of you outside waiting for this opportunity. Good day and God bless. So you got to figure out for yourself, what you are willing to accept and endure and put up with, and do the means justify the end. That's something you have to decide. I'm just here to be a vessel to give you both sides of the coin. So if you ever find yourself in that predicament, you can say, you know what, I think I remember seeing a video on YouTube from this very long-winded person telling me about the difference between all of these different deals and what to look out for. So there you go. Okay, so more recently, Meg Thee Stallion, I love her. But Meg Thee Stallion was very vocal. She came out about suing her label 1501 because essentially they tried to shelf her, which happens a lot. Labels, in my opinion, just get petty, or they get fed up whenever artists come at them and say, hey, I want to renegotiate my contract. Then all of a sudden the label gets an attitude and says, well, you want to renegotiate your contract, we're not going to release any more of your music, which is what happened in this case. So Meg Thee Stallion had to go to court, get an injunction against 1501, meaning they had to pretty much stop trying to shelve her, and she was able to release her music. Now I think she just signed a management contract with Roc Nation, and it's like that same thing. Like, I always think about this scene on NWA where Suge Knight is telling Dre, you want me to look at your contract? You want me to check out what your paperwork look like? I always have the image in my head because, man, NWA was another classic example of somebody who got screwed from their manager, Jerry Heller. Man. So I'm telling you, man, contracts. And then lastly, this is one too that's all over the headline. So something I don't think a lot of people talked about was Kanye West. So this pertains to publishing. Kanye West actually sued EMI. He was trying to buy back his publishing. And pretty much they refused it to him. So that was a whole dispute before he was able to finally settle. And then Scooter Braun, who you may recognize him as being a manager for, oh my God, so many people. Ariana Grande, Justin Bieber, Demi Lovato, for example. Like, he manages a lot of people. So Scooter Braun and Taylor Swift are beefing. I'm not really a Taylor Swift fan, but that's neither here nor there. But her complaints are valid. So pretty much he bought Big Machine, which was Taylor Swift's former label. Which then when he acquired Big Machine, he also ended up taking Taylor Swift's catalog, which means her masters. So that goes back to the first video we were saying that your record label owns your masters, and how artists are always fighting to purchase their masters back. So when Scooter Braun acquired Big Machine, then he also acquired Taylor Swift's masters along with all the other masters of the other artists that were signed to Big Machine. Well, Taylor Swift was pissed because, one, she claims that she had no idea that Scooter Broad had purchased Big Machine. She claimed she found out the same day that it happened. And two, she's pissed because she was already allegedly in the works of trying to negotiate a rate to purchase her masters back. Now, Scooter alleges that he offered Taylor Swift her masters um, back, but the stipulation or the condition was that in exchange for her old masters, he would then acquire her new masters. So, I mean, to me, that's a little petty because it's like, why would I trade this for no? Like, I want to own all of my masters. But that just goes to show, hey, it's a business. And Taylor Swift's old songs, I mean, they're worth a lot of money. So now he gets to control how those masters are used, including how she uses the songs that she wrote, which is really, I guess, the sad part. If she wants to perform those masters or remix them or remake them, she has to get permission from Big Machine and inevitably pay them for the use of her songs, which is really tragic. So those are our case studies. So to summarize this whole section, I know it took a long time. Thank you for bearing with me. We talked about advances, ownership, duration of the contracts, and how you can make money. Crazy but beautiful industry. We are going to talk about budgeting, and this section is going to go by super quick. So, to finish up today's video, we are going to finish off with budgeting. So, creating a budget can be very stressful. Yes, it can be tedious, absolutely, but it can also be a lifesaver. And it can save you a lot of money in the long run, and it can be a very good bargaining chip. If you're organized with how you spend your money and how you receive your money as well when you're trying to negotiate deals. Money talks. It just does. So if you want to play the game, sometimes you got to pay to play. And that's just what it is. You have to invest in yourself first. Labels these days are very lazy because we're in a digital age. So there's the days of A&R holding all the power and, coming out to these low-key underground jazz joints, looking for the Tina Turners of the world. And then, there being, a well-oiled machine or artist development team or in-house songwriting team. I mean, those days are long gone. Labels are looking for artists that already have established social media pages, established fan bases, artists who tour on their own and sell out shows, artists with over 1 million streams on their own. I mean, they're literally algorithms and teams that work for these labels that literally that's what they do. So that begs the question, if I can do this by myself, why do I need the label? Well, that's something you have to decide for yourself. But there's a few budget categories here that I think are important. Studio and recordings. So the bulk of your money is probably going to be spent on studio time and getting your recordings back. I mean, the goal should be for your music to sound as high quality, as professional as possible. I always say it needs to be radio ready. It needs to be radio ready to be played on the radio right now. So that's going to come from having a great engineer, using great equipment, using good microphones. Because if the recording is trash, it's not going to get much better when you try to mix and master it. I just have to say that. If it sounds like you recorded it underwater, unless that's an artistic decision, it's not going to sound good. And that's not really how you want to present yourself. I mean, you got to do what you can. It's a lot of bedroom producers out here making bops. There's some people who can record in their shower and have the acoustics sound like you're in Carnegie Hall. If you can create that type of atmosphere out of your bedroom or your bathroom, by all means, shut me up. But I'm just saying that it is worth it to spend a good amount of money on the recording process because that's what's going to pay off. Um, and then also too, when you get advances from these labels or these publishers or whatever, the thing is, well, specifically with labels, those advances typically are paying for your recording costs. So if you can eliminate that and say, you know what, I don't need your advance because I have a whole studio set up that I'm comfortable with. I've been using the same engineer for the last 4 mixtapes. They caught your attention. I'm gonna roll with what I have. That's good leverage. I mean, you're setting yourself up not to be in debt or indebted to a record label. Next thing, live shows and merchandise. Merchandise alone can get you paid. If you have someone who's very creative with the stroke of a pen, or who's a graphic designer who can come up with some really solid design ideas that you can put on merch. I mean, I've seen some really creative merch tables at the festivals that I've gone to or some of these concerts. Think outside the box. Pinterest is your friend. Depending on what your vibe is as an artist or as a band. Merch, don't sleep on merch. Merch can be a money maker, but at the same time, I would suggest allocating money for merch. T-shirts especially can be very expensive. So, if you're a band and your thing is T-shirts and you have a solid fan base who will buy a $25 T-shirt from you, then by all means put some money aside. Live shows, so that comes with traveling. I am someone who's heavily against the pay-to-play model in terms of like artists having to pay to get on stage. I feel like the artist should be getting paid to perform. But that's just what it is. The artists that I worked with, sometimes we've had to pay against what we wanted to do just because the means justified the ends. But definitely, I would say put some money aside for you to set up some really cool live shows. And again, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. Like, it depends on your fan base. If you're someone who does intimate shows, kind of like the So Far sound vibe or like the mahogany vibes, man, you can rent out somebody's living room, get an Airbnb, invite only, have somebody stream it, boom. It doesn't take a lot of money, but you should definitely budget for it. And then lastly, marketing and PR. I can't stress this enough. This is really, really important because this is your visibility. So, PR is a little tricky because I've worked with some PR companies who overpromise and underdeliver. So I would be very wary about jumping into getting working with a PR firm because they're ridiculously expensive. Like, they might charge you $3,000 for a 2 month PR campaign, and you may get very little from that. So I wouldn't necessarily, when I say PR, I don't mean necessarily go that route. But if you have a relationship with your local newspapers, with any podcast, if you have your own podcast, if you have a relationship with your local news, I know, with my artists, we have a wonderful relationship with our news station back in Memphis, where he's able to go on there and perform anytime he drops a new record, anytime he wants, because that's just the relationship that we have. That's all PR. All of that counts. I mean, it's media. So use the resources that you have at your disposal. Marketing, same thing. I mean, if you can afford, to hang $1,000 billboard, in your area, then by all means do that. If it means just putting, maybe $10, on a promotion on Instagram when you drop a new visual or something like that, like all of that counts. So those are just things to keep in mind in terms of budgeting. Like I said, that wasn't going to take very long. So that takes us to today's takeaways. You guys have been amazing. If you have made it to the end of this, drop a like button because you guys are the real MVPs. Okay, so just a recap of today's entire session. Hiring a team is chess, not checkers. Everyone on your team absolutely matters. Do your due diligence to put the right people on your team. And sometimes you don't know that they're not a right fit until they're not a right fit. And if you ever start to feel uneasy, then you gotta cut the snake. You gotta cut the head off the snake. Don't let it go too far to where, again, now contracts are involved and, you can't get out of it. It's just don't do it. So, just be careful about who you draft. Next, we did a nice little intro into contracts. I know that may have been heavy. That was a very lengthy section. If you have any specific questions about any of those contract types, drop a comment. I will gladly do my best to answer it. I am, again, someone, if I don't know something, I will have no shame in telling you I don't know. But I will also research to find an answer. And a lot of this stuff, too, comes from the All You Need to Know About the Music Business, Donald Passman's book. So I'm a big advocate of that book. So a lot of the questions that you have can be answered from him. He's an attorney. I'm studying for the LSAT now, so that I can become an attorney, and maybe you guys will come to me. I'll make sure you don't get screwed. And then lastly, budgeting. Money is the name of the game. So budget wisely, and you'll have some leverage. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's video. I really appreciate it. Don't forget about the copyright crash course that we're going to have on May 16th. Meet me on Zoom. Once you register, then I will send you the link, the Zoom link, and it'll be a great time. It's from 2 to 4, so I wanted to give enough time for questions to be answered. I promise I won't be as long-winded as I was today. That's going to be more hands-on and instructional. Like, I'm literally going to go to the copyright office and show you exactly how to register your music on the copyright website. And same thing with registering the music. So that's going to be purely instructional. So again, thank you. Tell a friend and tell a friend. Like, share, comment, subscribe. And stay healthy. Stay beautiful. Stay inside. Social distance. Wash your hands. Sanitize. Sage. Meditate. Whatever you do. And come back for the next video.